I picked up my daughter-in-law's coat at the dry cleaner. Mr. Davis, the shop owner, had known me for years. Suddenly he pulled me aside and whispered, "Listen carefully, Brenda. Take your grandchildren and get out of this town before sunrise." I froze, confused, and asked why. He took out a small plastic bag, his voice trembling. "Because I found this inside your daughter-in-law's coat. When I saw what was inside, my whole body went numb. I clutched my grandchildren tightly, my heart pounding. That afternoon, the summer heat still clung to my fingertips as I carried a heavy grocery bag home from the market. Sweat soaked the back of my blouse as I walked down the old street, where the peeling paint on the walls told stories of time gone by. Mr. Davis's dry cleaning shop sat at the corner, its faded wooden sign swaying in the wind. I stopped, pulled the crumpled yellow receipt from my purse. This morning, my daughter-in-law Kelly had slipped it into my hand and said quickly, "Mom, please pick up my wool coat from Mr. Davis's. I have meetings all day." I nodded, thinking it was just another errand, like many I'd done for my family before. When I stepped inside, the smell of fabric softener mixed with the heat from the ironing table. Mr. Davis, a thin man with glasses slipping down his nose, stood behind the counter flipping through his notebook with bony fingers. I handed him the receipt. He glanced at it, gave a small nod without saying a word, and slowly walked to the back room. Normally, he'd send his assistant, but today he went himself, almost as if he wanted to take his time. I waited, running my fingers along the handle of my basket, thinking about what to make for dinner for the kids. When he came back, Kelly's coat was neatly wrapped in a clear plastic cover, still smelling of fresh detergent. But instead of handing it to me, he stopped, glanced around the shop to make sure no one else was there, then gripped my hand tightly. "Brenda, come here," he said in a hushed, hoarse voice. Before I could ask, he pulled me behind an old curtain. The smell of chlorine and steam made it hard to breathe. Piles of clothes stacked high like walls surrounded us. His hands trembled as he opened the drawer under the counter and pulled out a small plastic bag. Inside was a bank transfer slip stamped in red with an amount so large I had to look several times to make sure my eyes weren't deceiving me. Millions of dollars. Who would hide something like that in a coat? Next to the paper was a photo. Two innocent faces, Emma and Noah, my grandchildren, had been circled in red ink, the lines messy and uneven, drawn in anger or something much darker. My blood froze. "Mr. Davis, what is this?" I stammered. He shook his head, fear filling his eyes. "Brenda, you have to take those kids and leave. Don't wait. Get out before sunrise." His voice cracked, urgent, almost pleading. I wanted to ask more, but he only pressed the plastic bag into my hand. "I can't keep this here. It's dangerous." My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the coat. I shoved the bag deep into the coat pocket. It felt like holding a bomb. When I stepped outside, my legs felt heavy, my palms cold and clammy. A few tomatoes fell out of my basket and rolled across the sidewalk. Around me, life went on as usual, the screech of a bus stopping, vendors calling out, children laughing. But all I could hear was Mr. Davis's warning echoing in my mind. Before sunrise. By the time I returned home, darkness had settled. The envelope in my coat pocket felt like it was burning. The house, once filled with the laughter of Emma and Noah, now felt cold and hollow. My son, Andrew, was away on a business trip in Chicago, hundreds of miles from here. It was just me, my two little grandchildren, and the uneasy silence Kelly had left behind. My phone buzzed. A text from Kelly. "Mom, there's an emergency meeting. I'll be home late. Please watch the kids for me." I stared at the message, unease creeping up my spine. Was it true or just an excuse? I walked into the living room where 7-year-old Emma was building a block house on the worn rug. "Look, Grandma, my house has a chimney," she giggled. Nearby, 4-year-old Noah hugged his plastic dinosaur, humming softly. I looked at them, my heart aching. The image of the 2 red circles flashed before me, stealing my breath. I forced a smile, patting Emma's hair. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Take a little break, okay? Grandma's going to make dinner." But my mind was in chaos. Mr. Davis's words echoed again. "Leave before sunrise." I didn't know what I was running from, only that every instinct told me I had to protect those children. I walked into my bedroom, locked the door, and with trembling hands, called Rose my closest friend, a nurse I trusted completely. "Rose, it's me, Brenda," I whispered. "I need your help. Do you know any reliable cab drivers? I need to leave town tonight." She was silent for a few seconds, sensing something was wrong. "Brenda, what's going on? Why so sudden?" I swallowed hard. "I can't explain now, just please, as soon as possible." She didn't press. "I'll call my brother. He drives a cab, very discreet. Give me 10 minutes." I hung up, my chest tightening. I moved to the kitchen, my hands working on instinct cutting slices of cheese, grabbing the kids' favorite crackers, and tossing a few water bottles into a bag. I didn't know where we'd go, only that we couldn't stay. From the living room came the sound of laughter, Emma, showing Noah how to build a bridge out of blocks. The sound broke me. I prayed I was wrong, that this was all a misunderstanding, but the image of those red circles crushed that hope completely. I rushed into their room, stuffing clothes into a suitcase, the blue sweater Emma loved, Noah's superhero pajamas, some socks, his toy, truck, her cloth doll. I didn't bother folding, just shoved everything in. A streetlight flickered outside, startling me. I pulled the curtains tight. In a small town like Greenville, everyone knew everyone, and I couldn't risk questions. My phone buzzed again. Rose texted, "The cab's here, parked at the corner. My brother's name is Michael. You can trust him." I took a deep breath, walked into the living room, and gently shook Emma's shoulder. "Come on, sweetheart, put on your coat, we're going for a little ride." She looked up, eyes wide. "A ride? At night? Where are we going, Grandma?" I smiled weakly. "Somewhere fun, but we have to go now or we'll be late." Noah rubbed his eyes, half asleep. "I'm sleepy, Grandma," he mumbled. I pulled a candy from my pocket and handed it to him. "Here, sweetheart, have this, and you can sleep in the car." He smiled, forgetting his drowsiness. I lifted Noah into my arms, took Emma's hand, and hurried out the door. The hallway felt endless. My slippers dragged softly across the cold tile. I placed the kids carefully in the back seat and buckled them in. Emma clutched her doll, watching me curiously. Noah yawned and leaned against her shoulder. I sat beside them, holding the suitcase close. The driver, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, glanced at me in the mirror. "Where to at this hour, ma'am?" I swallowed. "The bus station, please. As fast as you can." The car sped through the night, leaving behind the house that now held only secrets and betrayal. The bus terminal was still bustling, neon lights flashing red and blue across cracked signs. Voices shouted, wheels rolled, horns blared. Yet somehow, surrounded by all that noise, I felt safer. I squeezed Emma's hand. Noah slept soundly against my shoulder, his warm breath on my neck reminding me to stay strong. I walked to the ticket window, forcing my voice to stay steady. 3 tickets to Savannah. the last bus tonight." The ticket clerk, an old man with a gray beard, eyed me and the children before sliding 3 tickets across the glass. "Bus is leaving now. You'd better hurry." I nodded, paid, and turned to Emma with a forced smile. "We're going to visit a distant relative, sweetheart. It'll be fun." She tilted her head, curious. "What relative, Grandma? Do I know them?" I brushed her hair gently, avoiding her gaze. "Maybe not yet. It's a long trip, so try to sleep, okay?" She hugged her doll tightly and pressed her face against the window. The bus pulled away, its engine breaking the silence of the night. Noah's head drooped onto my arm, his little toy truck still clutched in his hand. Streetlights flashed by, fading into streaks of gold. Savannah, where I'd lived more than 20 years ago, was the only place that came to mind. It was where my husband and I had built our early life, where Andrew was born, where I'd once felt safe. Now, I prayed it could shelter us again. Deep down, though, I knew I wasn't just running away. I was heading toward a truth I wasn't ready to face. By the time we reached Savannah, dawn was breaking. Pale sunlight filtered through old rooftops. I carried Noah and led Emma to a small inn tucked behind the town square. The room was damp, the twin bed covered in faded sheets. I laid the children down and pulled the blanket over them. "It's okay now," Emma murmured in her sleep. "Grandma, where's Mommy?" The question cut through me like a knife. I stroked her hair, whispering, "Go to sleep, sweetheart. Mommy's working. She'll be home soon." I knew it was a lie. Kelly, the daughter-in-law I once loved, was now a shadow I could barely name. I sat by the window, hands clasped, my mind spinning. The plastic bag still rested in my coat pocket, heavy as a curse, the transfer slip, the photo with those red circles, and Mr. Davis's desperate warning, all pieces of a puzzle I didn't know how to start. Solving. I thought of Andrew, miles away in Chicago. I wanted to call him, to tell him everything. But every time I reached for the phone, I stopped. If I was wrong, I'd destroy his family. But if I was right, if Kelly was involved in something terrible, how could I tell him that the woman he loved, the mother of his children, had betrayed them all? In that confusion, one thought flickered. I had to go to the church. Father Stephen, the elderly priest in Savannah, had guided me through my darkest days after my husband's death. If anyone could help me find clarity, it was him. The next morning, I woke the children and dressed them. "Let's go to church, then Grandma will buy you ice cream," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. Noah grinned. "Chocolate, Grandma?" I nodded, though anxiety twisted in my stomach. We walked to St. Francis Church, where old stone walls and the sound of bells brought a rare sense of peace. Father Stephen recognized me immediately. His silver hair glimmered in the stained glass light, his eyes kind yet sharp. "Brenda, it's been so long," he said warmly. "What brings you and the children here? Is something wrong?" I nodded, unable to answer in front of the kids. After Mass, I let Emma and Noah play in the churchyard with other children while I asked Father Stephen for a private talk. In a small room behind the altar, the scent of wax and old wood helped me breathe again. I gathered my courage and told him everything: the coat, the transfer slip with that enormous sum, and the photo of my grandchildren marked in red. My hands trembled as I handed him the plastic bag. He sat silently for a long moment, his fingers tightening, his expression growing grave. Finally, he exhaled deeply. "This is beyond a priest's help, Brenda," he said quietly. "This isn't just a family matter. It's something much bigger. You need someone who understands the law." He hesitated, then added, "I know someone, Fiona, a lawyer, and a parishioner here. She'll know what to do. A small spark of hope flickered in me for the first time in days. That afternoon, in a modest church office, I met Fiona. She was in her 30s, sharp-eyed, with short hair and a calm but piercing presence. Wearing latex gloves, she examined the documents under a warm lamp. "This transaction code belongs to a shell company registered in Miami," she said, typing quickly on her laptop. Her expression tightened as she pointed at the bottom of the slip next to a signature. Curtis Howard. The name meant nothing to me, but when Fiona exchanged a glance with Father Stephen, I felt the chill. "This man has ties to financial fraud and money laundering," Fiona said softly. "This isn't simple, Mrs. Brenda." My fingers trembled against the wooden desk. "But why my grandchildren? Why were their faces marked in red?" I asked, my voice breaking. Fiona didn't answer right away. Her gaze softened with pity. "We need to investigate further," she finally said. "For now, you and the children must stay here somewhere safe. I'll contact a few trusted colleagues to open an inquiry." Father Stephen placed a gentle but firm hand on my shoulder. "Brenda, God will protect you and your grandchildren, but you must stay strong for them." I held Emma and Noah close as we left the church, the gray afternoon light washing over the cobblestone streets. The sound of the bells echoed behind us, a reminder that I was no longer alone. The next morning, I stood at the gate of Rose's house, an old friend and nurse I trusted completely. Through the wooden fence, I watched Emma and Noah playing in the yard. Emma showed Noah how to blow soap bubbles, their laughter filling the sunny morning air. I smiled, but it felt heavy, as if each second there could be stolen away. "Rose, could you watch them for a day? I need to return to town to handle something important," I said, trying to steady my voice. Rose studied me, her sharp eyes full of unspoken questions, but she only nodded. "Don't worry, Brenda. They'll be fine here. I'll make them pudding and tell them stories." I squeezed her hand, grateful beyond words. I caught the first bus back to town, huddled in the last seat with my coat still zipped tight, its hidden contents a haunting weight I couldn't escape. The countryside blurred past the window-dry cornfields, old houses, but all I could see in my mind were those red circles on Emma and Noah's faces. I questioned everything, whether leaving them was the right choice, whether I was walking into danger alone. But deep down, I knew this was the only way to protect them. I had to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it was. When I stepped off the bus, our family home stood quiet and lifeless, no longer the warm place Andrew and I had built together. Now it felt like a crime scene waiting to be uncovered. I took the spare key from my purse, my hands trembling as I opened the gate. The hinges screeched in the silence, making me flinch. The street was empty, save for a few barking dogs in the distance. I shut the door behind me, realizing I was stepping into a world where everything I once believed in might soon collapse. The living room looked exactly as it had the day I left. Kelly's thin blanket was tossed carelessly across the sofa, as if she'd just set it down a few hours earlier. Beside it sat a half-empty coffee cup, the dried foam leaving a brown ring. I stood still, scanning the room for any trace, any clue that could explain what had happened. The air felt heavy, as though even the walls were keeping secrets. I didn't hesitate. I went straight to Andrew and Kelly's bedroom, where I knew there was something under the closet I needed to check. The small gray safe was still there, silent as an accomplice. I remembered Andrew's birthday a few months ago, when Kelly, tipsy after several shots of tequila, had laughed and blurted out the passcode. "Mom, you'd never guess." Andrew had told me to change the code, but I'd kept it May 12th, 2018, their wedding day. Back then, I just laughed it off, thinking it was nothing. But now, those numbers were the key to the truth. I knelt down, pulled the safe out from the dust, and turned the dial with trembling hands. 5, 12, 18. The soft click sounded like a gunshot in the silence, tightening my chest. I opened the heavy door, breathing hard. Inside were neat stacks of $100 bills. The flash of green stunned me tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars. More money than my family had ever seen. Next to it lay a pile of fake passports with names I didn't recognize. Mary Johnson, John Smith, Sophie Miller. I opened them one by one, my pulse quickening as though I were reading the names of ghosts. In the corner were 2 sealed cell phones, ready to be activated. But what took my breath away was the stack of papers at the bottom 3 first-class plane tickets from New York to Madrid, issued under the names Kelly, Emma, and Noah. There was no ticket for Andrew. I checked again and again, hoping I'd misread, but the truth was cold as a blade to the heart. Kelly had planned to escape, taking my grandchildren and leaving my son behind like an unwanted burden. My hands shaking, I pulled out another envelope. Inside was a photo of Kelly beaming beside an unfamiliar man in a sleek black suit. On the back, written in messy ink, were 2 words, "My Curtis." The name Curtis Howard matched the signature on the bank transfer slip. The room started spinning. The air grew thick, hard to breathe. I sank to the floor, my back against the dresser, the photo slipping from my hands. Kelly, the daughter-in-law I had loved like my own child, the one who used to cook with me every holiday, who once cried in my arms when Andrew struggled at work, had been betraying us all along. She hadn't just betrayed Andrew, she was planning to take Emma and Noah with her as part of her scheme. I thought of Emma's bright smile while drawing me pictures, of Noah wrapping his tiny arms around my legs whenever I baked cookies. How could she be so cruel? How could she circle their innocent faces in red, as if they were commodities? A sudden sound outside a motorcycle engine made me jump. It was Mr. Peterson, the neighbor. I hurriedly shoved everything back into the safe, trying to leave it exactly as it was. My hands shook so hard I dropped one of the passports but managed to grab it again. I pushed the safe back into place, locked it, my heart pounding like a guilty drum. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and forced myself to breathe. As I passed the kitchen, something in the trash caught my eye, a torn envelope glinting under the light, stamped with the logo of a foreign bank. Instinctively, I picked it up and slipped it into my coat pocket. When the door slammed shut behind me, I stepped onto the street like someone walking in a daze. I knew I wasn't just running anymore. In my pocket lay evidence of something monstrous. Kelly had planned to flee with Curtis, taking the money, leaving Andrew behind, and using Emma and Noah as part of the deal. I walked back to the inn in Savannah, my legs heavy, my coat pocket still carrying that horrifying proof. By then, it was noon. Weak sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, spilling onto the worn wooden floor. Emma and Noah had just woken up, rubbing their eyes. Emma, her hair tangled, looked up at me with those big, innocent eyes. "Grandma, when are we going back to Mommy?" The question sliced through me. I knelt, smoothing her hair, forcing a smile that didn't feel real. "Soon, sweetheart. Your mom's busy right now. Stay with Grandma a few more days, okay?" My throat tightened. Noah, clutching his toy dinosaur, chimed in. "Grandma, I want cookies." I nodded, handing him a pack from my bag, anything to hide how badly my hands were shaking. I took them to the inn's small backyard, where an old swing creaked in the wind. "Play for a while. Grandma will sit here and watch," I said, trying to sound calm while feeling like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. The images from the safe cash, fake passports, plane tickets, and that photo of Kelly with Curtis kept flashing in my mind. I knew I couldn't keep running. I had to face the truth. But how could I protect my grandchildren when their own mother was part of the danger? That afternoon, Fiona arrived. Her steps were quick, but worry showed in her eyes. 2 plain-clothed men followed her, their demeanor unmistakably federal. They introduced themselves and flashed badges. "Mrs. Brenda, I'm Agent Ryan," said one in a deep voice. "This is my partner, Agent David. We need to see everything you've found." I nodded and led them to the small room where the wooden table had become the center of all truth. I laid everything out: the transfer slip with its massive sum, the foreign bank envelope, the photo of Kelly and Curtis, the 3 tickets to Madrid, and the stack of fake passports. Each item felt like a knife reminding me of betrayal. Agent David connected one of the sealed phones to his laptop. Lines of code raced across the screen. "We can recover deleted data," he said, eyes fixed on the monitor. "These devices usually hold more than people think." I sat motionless, fingers interlocked, my heart pounding. Emma and Noah's laughter drifted in from outside, but I couldn't bear to look. If I relaxed even for a second, I would break. After a moment, David turned the screen toward me. There was a folder of photos. The first image froze my blood. It was Emma and Noah, their faces circled in red ink, warped and cruel. I couldn't breathe. The room felt drained of air. Agent Ryan lowered his voice, trying to keep me calm. "Ma'am, these aren't personal markings. They're identifiers used in human trafficking networks." The words "human trafficking" hit like thunder. He zoomed in, pointing to small numbers in the corner. "That's a transaction code. The red circle means target selected. The children were part of a larger plan." My fists clenched. Instinct screamed at me to run outside and hold my grandchildren close. My vision blurred, but I didn't cry. I wouldn't let them see. "Are you saying they were going to sell my grandchildren?" My voice shook. Ryan nodded, his eyes full of pity. "We don't have the full picture yet, but the evidence points to an organized crime ring." He gestured to the photo of Kelly. "This woman, she's likely an accomplice." Fiona placed a hand on my shoulder, her voice trembling too. "Mrs. Brenda, this has gone far beyond a family matter. This is a criminal case. We'll do everything we can to keep the children safe." But her reassurance couldn't calm the storm inside me. Kelly, the woman I once called my own daughter, who had been by my side when Noah was born, who shared countless warm evenings with us, how could she do something so inhuman? How could she turn her own children into merchandise for a filthy deal? David kept typing, retrieving deleted messages. One appeared on screen, brief but chilling. 2 targets selected. Ensure delivery on time. It had been sent from Kelly's number to an unknown contact, signed C. H. Curtis Howard. My blood ran cold. "She really did this?" I whispered. Fiona squeezed my hand gently. "Mrs. Brenda, I know how painful this is, but you have to stay strong for the children." Ryan spoke firmly. "Stay calm and act normal. Do not contact Kelly. She can't know you've discovered anything. We need time to proceed with the investigation." I nodded, though my chest ached. How could I pretend nothing had changed when every breath tasted of betrayal? How could I look into Emma and Noah's eyes, knowing their mother had planned to sell them? I brought the children back inside, forcing myself to play as usual. "Tell us a vampire story, Grandma." Noah climbed into my lap, pleading. I held him close and told the familiar tale, my voice cracking. Emma sat beside us, coloring softly, humming a tune. I looked at them, my heart breaking. They were still innocent, untouched by the darkness that had almost devoured them. Outside, dark clouds gathered and rain poured down in sheets. The sound against the roof matched the chaos in my chest. I drew the curtains, hugging my grandchildren tightly, wanting to shield them from the storm both outside and within. The next morning, a black car with no license plate and no lights stopped in front of the inn. I knew it was the feds. Fiona had called earlier. "Mrs. Brenda, today we'll go over the plan." Her voice was steady, but I heard the concern behind it. I threw on a sweater, woke the kids, and asked Rose to watch them another day. "Where are you going, Grandma?" Emma asked, wide-eyed. I brushed her hair and smiled faintly. "To see an old friend. I'll be back by afternoon." Noah, munching a cookie, just nodded. I kissed their foreheads and walked to the car, my heart heavy as stone. The federal office in Savannah was hidden down a narrow alley, unmarked, with nothing to suggest it handled serious criminal cases. Inside, they led me to a small conference room thick with the scent of old coffee and paperwork. Fiona was already waiting at the long table. Across from her sat 3 agents, Ryan, David, and a woman named Sophia, whose calm eyes carried both authority and empathy. "Mrs. Brenda, we've reviewed all the evidence you provided," Ryan began, his tone firm yet measured. "This is a major case involving an international criminal network. We'll need your cooperation to apprehend Kelly and Curtis." They laid out the plan to stage a fake disappearance for Emma and Noah, forcing Kelly and Curtis to panic and reveal their next move. "We'll monitor every line of communication," Sophia said, pointing to a map on the screen. "Kelly's phone is already tapped, and Curtis's number is under federal watch. When they reach out, we'll have proof," Ryan added. I felt my stomach tighten. "My grandchildren, they'll be safe, won't they?" I asked, my voice shaking. Sophia placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "We've arranged a secure shelter for them. You can video call anytime to see them." They led me to another room, where a social worker sat playing with Emma and Noah amid piles of colorful toys. Emma was coloring, and Noah was building a Lego spaceship, mumbling a story under his breath. Tears welled in my eyes. They had no idea I was fighting to save them from their own mother. "Mrs. Brenda, the children will stay here with me," the woman said softly. "I'll care for them like my own." I nodded, hugging them one more time, feeling as if I were leaving pieces of my heart behind. That night, I returned to the inn and sat in the small room with Fiona and David, the phone on the table, the laptop glowing with the live feed of intercepted messages. Just as predicted, my phone buzzed. A message from Kelly, her tone frantic. "Mom, where are you? Have you seen the kids? They're gone." I called the police. I'm terrified. I read it, my chest twisting. How could she pretend like this? She was the one who planned it all. David shook his head, signaling me not to reply. "Let her walk into her own trap," he whispered. Half an hour later, Kelly called a strange number. The wiretap kicked in, her voice trembling through the speaker. "Curtis, the kids are gone. Everything's ready, but now they've disappeared." The man's voice came through, raspy, irritated. "Calm down. There's no turning back. The tickets are bought. The buyer's waiting. No delivery. We're finished." The word buyer cut through me like a knife. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, fighting back tears. Emma and Noah, my little angels, had been reduced to merchandise. I wanted to scream, to confront Kelly, but David's cold eyes warned me to stay silent. The call ended, but more messages followed. Kelly texted Curtis, "If we can't find the kids, everything falls apart. Do something." David let out a dry, grim laugh. "Let it fall apart, that's exactly what we want," he said calmly. "These messages are undeniable proof." Fiona reached for my hand and gave it a gentle squeeze, as if passing me a final surge of strength. "Mrs. Brenda, we're almost done," Fiona said, her voice trembling as if she too could feel my pain. I sat still, my hands cold. Fear and relief tangled in my chest relief because Kelly and Curtis were digging their own graves, but the ache inside me wouldn't fade. I remembered the days when Kelly was a shy young woman, sitting with me in the kitchen kneading dough, talking about her dream of opening a small bakery. I had loved her like a daughter. Now, every memory only deepened the wound in my heart. Outside, the night was thick and starless. I heard the hum of an engine, a car with its headlights off parked motionless at the corner, like a predator waiting to strike. I looked at Fiona, then at David, feeling as though I'd stepped into a chess game without knowing how it would end. "Mrs. Brenda, you did the right thing," Fiona said softly but firmly. "You saved your grandchildren." I nodded, though doubt clawed at me. Had I really saved them, or just dragged all three of us into a new nightmare? That night, darkness swallowed Savannah whole. I sat in a federal command vehicle parked a few blocks from a cheap motel. The air inside was dense. The mix of motor oil and stale coffee made it hard to breathe. Fiona sat beside me, her eyes sharp as steel, though her hands were clasped tight in tension. Sophia, the federal officer who'd reassured me that morning, adjusted the radio and said, "Mrs. Brenda, just stay still and listen. We'll handle the rest." But how could I stay calm when my heart was beating so fast it felt like it might burst? Emma and Noah were safe at the police child center, yet the thought of witnessing Kelly's betrayal made me tremble. Through the radio came a flurry of urgent voices. "Alpha Team, take the northeast corner. Bravo Team, secure the back entrance. Targets are moving to the meeting point." My nails dug deep into my palms. Fiona placed a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Mrs. Brenda, this will end tonight. You did the right thing taking the children away." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. The right thing. The words echoed in my mind. What had I done except run and beg for help? But deep inside, I knew there had been no other choice. I had to protect my grandchildren, even if it meant facing the cruelest truth about the daughter-in-law I once loved as my own. Sophia switched on the live transmission from the wiretap. Kelly's voice came through, shaky and desperate. "Curtis, I don't understand. Where are the kids? Without them, what do we have to deliver?" Each word felt like a knife. The word deliver made me want to scream, to slap her across the face. How could she call her own children merchandise? Curtis's voice barked back. "Shut up! Get to the hotel first. The middleman's waiting there. No product, and we're dead." I held my breath. The air in the van seemed to vanish. Middleman. Product. Every word pierced my chest. Sophia spoke into her radio. "Targets have entered the parking lot. Units, stand by." Then came the sound of car doors slamming, quick footsteps echoing. I imagined Kelly and Curtis walking into the empty lot, unaware they were stepping straight into a trap. Suddenly, a shout tore through the silence. "Federal agents, hands up!" Footsteps pounded, flashlights flared, and then Kelly's shrill scream cut through the air. "No, this can't be." I heard the struggle, her voice breaking. "Curtis, run!" Then came a sharp command. "Don't move. "Hands up or I'll shoot." A dull thud followed, then the sound of a body hitting the pavement beside a white car. "Don't move," another voice barked. Handcuffs clicked. Kelly sobbed, her voice fractured. "You're making a mistake. I didn't do anything." Then I heard the rustle of her bag falling open and the sound of cash spilling across the floor. A cold male voice asked, "Got anything else to say?" I couldn't hold it in anymore. Tears flooded my eyes. I didn't know if I was crying out of relief or grief. Grief that Kelly, the woman I had once called my daughter, had tried to sell my grandchildren. Fiona gripped my hand tightly, her voice shaking. "Mrs. Brenda, they've been arrested. The kids are safe now." But the pain wouldn't leave me. I thought of those nights when Kelly sat beside me in the kitchen, laughing and sharing small dreams. I had trusted her, loved her, treated her like family. Now, she was just a shadow, the ghost of someone who had tried to destroy everything we had. A voice crackled through the radio, short and firm. "2 targets in custody. Mission successful. No casualties." Sirens wailed, red and blue lights flashing across the walls of the old motel. Orders shouted, boots pounding, the night exploded in chaos. But for me, it was the sound of fate closing its net. Weeks later, I sat in the federal courtroom in Savannah. The air was thick, as if the walls themselves held secrets. Every seat was filled neighbors, reporters, clutching notebooks and cameras. I held Emma and Noah close. They nestled into me, sensing the tension around us. Fiona sat beside me, gently rubbing my back. "Mrs. Brenda, it's all ending today. You've been so brave." But I didn't feel brave. My heart was breaking. The truth about Kelly, about the monstrous plan, was about to be revealed, and I knew it would leave scars that would never heal for me or the children. On the defendant's bench, Kelly appeared in a beige prison jumpsuit, her hair disheveled, the glow she once had completely gone. Her face was hollow, her eyes sunken, as if guilt itself had consumed her. Beside her sat Curtis, head bowed, wrists shackled, trembling. I looked at them, unsure what I felt anymore, anger, sorrow, or just emptiness. I had loved Kelly, defended her to Andrew, but now she was a stranger. A woman who had planned to sell 2 innocent children as if they were property. The prosecutor, a middle-aged man with a commanding voice, stood and addressed the court. "Your Honor, today we are trying a case of extraordinary gravity involving money laundering, conspiracy to kidnap minors, and participation in a transnational criminal organization." He presented the evidence piece by piece, each one slicing through me like a blade. The transfer slip with the massive sum appeared on the large screen. The red numbers drew gasps from the courtroom. Then came the stack of fake passports, the false names exposing the criminal network Kelly and Curtis had been involved in. 3 plane tickets to Madrid in the names of Kelly, Emma, and Noah appeared next. I gripped my grandchildren's hands tightly, trying to hide my trembling. But when the photo of Emma and Noah with red circles around their faces flashed on the screen, the room erupted. Women in the back rows cried out. Murmurs of outrage rippled through the crowd. I immediately pulled the children close, covering their eyes. "Grandma, what's that?" Emma whispered. I stroked her hair, my voice breaking. "Nothing, sweetheart, just an old picture." But inside, I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry until there was nothing left. How could I explain that their own mother had marked their faces for a criminal deal? The prosecutor's tone sharpened as he played the recording that had changed everything. Kelly's voice filled the room, desperate yet cold. "Curtis, the kids are gone. Without them, what do we deliver?" Curtis's dry voice replied, "Get to the hotel. The middleman's waiting." The courtroom fell silent, the only sound Kelly's ragged breathing through the speakers. I heard every word, as if they were burned into my mind. Each sentence shattered another piece of the woman I had once thought was my daughter. Kelly's defense attorney rose, trying to salvage her case. "Your Honor, my client is a victim manipulated by Curtis Howard. She was unaware of the trafficking ring and never intended harm to her children." But the prosecutor replied coldly, his words like a blade. In the recording, the defendant herself states she needed the children to negotiate. "Those are not the words of a victim, they are the words of an accomplice." He pointed at the screen as the recording replayed, Kelly's voice echoing through the courtroom like an undeniable confession. Curtis sat motionless, silent, as if accepting his fate. When the judge's gavel finally struck, the entire room held its breath. The defendants, Kelly Harrison and Curtis Howard, are hereby sentenced to multiple years in federal prison for money laundering, conspiracy to kidnap minors, and involvement in an international criminal organization, the judge declared firmly. Voices rose around me, shock, disgust, disbelief. Some shook their heads, others whispered. I sat still, holding Fiona's hand tightly, a lump in my throat. Justice had been served, but the pain remained. Emma tugged at my sleeve, her small voice trembling. "Grandma, where's Mommy?" The question cut through me like a blade. I pulled her into my arms, unable to answer. How could I tell her that the mother she loved was being led away in handcuffs? Noah looked up, his big eyes wide with innocence. "Mommy's on a work trip, right? Grandma?" I nodded, tears sliding down my cheeks. "Yes, sweetheart, she's very busy. But Grandma and Daddy will always be here with you." They nodded, unaware that the truth would forever scar their hearts. When we stepped out of the courthouse, the midday sun poured over the square. People scattered through the noise of traffic and conversation, but to me the world felt blurred. Fiona took my hand gently. "Mrs. Brenda, you saved them. You're their hero." I smiled faintly, though I didn't feel like a hero. I was just a mother, a grandmother, trying to protect what little was left of her family. The truth, cruel as it was, had finally come to light. Months after the trial, life slowly found a new rhythm for me and the children in Savannah. I rented a small apartment near the central square, where the church bells rang each morning like a calm melody pulling me from nightmares of Kelly and Curtis. The apartment was small, a tiny living room, a narrow kitchen, and 2 bedrooms, but to me, it was a refuge, a new home for Emma and Noah. Every morning, I woke early to make breakfast egg sandwiches for Noah, cookies with milk for Emma. I brushed her hair, straightened Noah's school collar, and walked them to the elementary school near street. Francis Church. Watching them run toward their classroom, waving and smiling, I felt a fragile spark of hope, though the wound in my heart had yet to heal. One afternoon, while watering the pots of chrysanthemums on the balcony, a yellow cab stopped out front. The door opened, and Andrew stepped out, a travel bag slung over his shoulder, his shirt wrinkled from the long trip. My son looked thinner, his face gaunt, his eyes tired, carrying the weight of everything that had happened. I dropped the watering can, water splashing everywhere, and ran to him. "Andrew, you're home?" My voice broke as I threw my arms around him, afraid that if I let go he might vanish. Like the peaceful days long gone, Andrew held me tight, then knelt down and opened his arms as Emma and Noah ran out, shouting, "Daddy, Daddy!" They crashed into his chest, laughing, and I saw a glimmer of light return to his eyes, if only for a moment. That night, the 4 of us sat around the small kitchen table. I made chicken soup, Andrew's favorite since childhood, the aroma of broth and pepper filling the room. Emma told stories from school. Noah showed a drawing his teacher had praised, but the air remained heavy, as if we all knew something still needed to be said. When dinner was over, I sent the children to their room to play, then sat across from Andrew. "Son, I have to tell you everything." My voice trembled as I clasped my hands together. I started from that afternoon at the dry cleaner when I found the transfer slip and the photo of Emma and Noah circled in red. I told him about the bus ride in the night, the safe under the closet, the plane tickets to Madrid, and finally, the trial where every horrifying truth came to light. Each word was a knife not only to me but to Andrew too. My son sat in silence, his hands gripping his hair, eyes red. When I reached the part where Kelly called the children merchandise to negotiate, Andrew slammed his hand on the table, his voice breaking. "Enough, Mom." He stood abruptly, pacing the small room, his shoulders shaking. "Mom, I suspected Kelly for a while," he said, voice choked. "She used to leave early, come home late, hide her phone. Then money started disappearing from our account. I asked, and she said it was from extra work. I didn't want to believe it. I thought she was doing it for our family. But the truth is, I was just a fool." He stopped, turning his face away, his shoulders trembling. I stood up and held his hand without saying a word, silently sharing his pain. I understood that Andrew's suffering wasn't just about his wife's betrayal, but also the helplessness of a father who couldn't protect his children. From the bedroom, Emma stepped out holding her doll, her voice small. "Grandma, is Daddy sad?" I nodded, pulled her close, and spooned more chicken into her bowl. "Daddy's just tired, sweetheart. Eat your dinner." Noah looked up, his innocent voice breaking the silence. "Daddy, can we play Lego tomorrow?" Andrew forced a smile, ruffling his son's hair. "Sure, buddy, we'll play tomorrow." But I knew that smile was only a mask hiding a broken heart. After the kids went to bed, Andrew sat beside me, his voice steady but heavy. "Mom, I'm going to file for divorce. I want custody of the kids. I'll rebuild life with you for them." I looked at him, seeing in his eyes a determination I hadn't seen in years. "Are you sure, Andrew?" I asked softly. He nodded and gripped my hand tightly. "I can't forgive her, Mom. Not for my sake, but for Emma and Noah. They deserve a safe life. I'll do whatever it takes to give them that." I nodded, tears filling my eyes. My son had finally found the courage to face the truth, even though it broke both our hearts. That night, I sat quietly on the balcony, watching the street below glow under the pale yellow lights, my heart torn between sorrow and peace. The soft street lights flickered across the walls. Andrew's voice reading a bedtime story drifted from the room, blending with Emma's giggles and Noah's laughter. And the little teddy bear said, "I'm not afraid of the dark anymore," Andrew read, and Noah shouted, "That teddy bear's so brave." The sound of pages turning filled the air, carrying a fragile warmth that wrapped around me. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, and felt that warmth return to my heart. Time passed in silence. The small apartment I had rented had truly become a home, a place where the wounds of 3 generations could finally begin to heal. The court issued its final ruling, granting Andrew and me full custody of Emma and Noah. When I heard the news, I sat on the sofa holding a cup of hot tea, feeling as if the heavy stone pressing on my chest had finally been lifted. Every Sunday morning I took the children to the park nearby. The bells from St. Francis Church chimed softly as birds sang in the trees. Andrew, now working steadily in Savannah, played soccer with Noah on the grass. The boy chased the ball, his bright smile shining like sunlight. "Kick harder, Dad!" Noah shouted, while Emma rode her bike around the fountain, her ponytail swaying in the wind. I sat on a wooden bench with a cup of hot coffee, watching the three of them in the sunshine. Rays of light slipped through the leaves, scattering golden spots across the ground. In that moment, I felt true peace, as if the sky had finally cleared after a long storm. One afternoon, we walked together through the market at the town square. The air was filled with the smell of grilled food and fresh fruit. Emma, her eyes sparkling, picked out an old comic book from a vendor's stall. "Grandma, there's a princess riding a dragon in here," she said, showing me the cover. I smiled, brushing her hair gently. "That's a wonderful choice. I'll read it to you tonight." Noah tugged on Andrew's sleeve, pointing at a superhero-shaped balloon. "Dad, buy that one. It can fly so high." Andrew laughed, pulling out his wallet, while I picked up some fresh vegetables, a few ripe tomatoes, and a bag of corn for soup. Those simple moments, like tiny puzzle pieces, slowly pieced our broken family back together. I hung Emma and Noah's crayon drawings on the living room wall, 4 figures holding hands under a red-roofed house, with a big sun and a few white clouds. Emma pointed proudly. "That's us, Grandma. I made the roof red because it's my favorite color." I smiled at the drawing, though my heart tightened. Their mother wasn't in it, and I knew no matter how hard we tried, that emptiness would always remain. I hoped Andrew's and my love would be enough to fill part of it. Sometimes I saw Kelly's picture in the newspaper, short articles with photos of her looking pale behind bars. Each time, I quietly folded the paper and tossed it to the bottom of the trash bin. The children were too young to understand, and I couldn't let their innocent smiles be stained by such cruel truth. But I knew the day would come when I'd have to tell them. I would have to explain why their mother wasn't here. The thought chilled me, but I promised myself that when that time came, I'd help them understand without breaking their hearts. After they fell asleep, I often sat at the kitchen table, opening the old journal I'd started the day we moved to Savannah. My hands no longer shook as I wrote softly across the page. Today, Emma drew a family. She doesn't know that red-roofed house is all we have left, but I'll do everything I can to keep it standing. They will grow up surrounded by love and truth, not lies or fear. And no one will ever draw red circles around their faces again. I closed the journal and turned off the light. In the darkness, only the steady breathing of 2 little angels and the whisper of the night breeze through the window remained. Sometimes, in my dreams, I still saw Kelly, not the woman in the courtroom, but the young girl who once came to my house with a bouquet of white chrysanthemums and a shy smile. I would wake up with silent tears, not from longing, but from the pain of a broken trust. Then I'd hear Emma's cheerful voice from the living room, or Noah's giggle while playing with his father, and I knew I couldn't let the past pull me down again. I wiped my tears, stood up, and began preparing for another day with our small family. One night, after Andrew finished reading to the kids, he stayed in the living room. "Mom," he said, his tone calm but certain, "I've found a stable job here. I want to stay in Savannah, raise the kids. With you. We can do this, right?" I looked at him and saw the determination in his eyes that I hadn't seen in so long. "Of course we can, son," I said, taking his hand with a smile. "We'll make it because we have each other." Andrew smiled, and for the first time in months, it wasn't a smile filled with pain. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, I realized that after the storm, our family had truly come back to life. A fragile rebirth built from the shattered pieces of trust and love, but filled with hope. I stepped onto the balcony. gazing down the quiet street, listening to the distant church bells ring like a reminder that no matter how cruel the past had been, Andrew, Emma, Noah, and I would keep moving forward with love as our guiding light. There are wounds in life that don't heal right away, but time, love, and compassion can stitch them back together with threads of understanding. My family had weathered the storm, lost so much, and broken apart, but in the ashes, we found one another again. I realized that sometimes, to protect those we love, we must rise up and face the truth, even when it shatters our hearts. A mother's and grandmother's love isn't perfect, but it's stronger than any trial. That love didn't just save my grandchildren, it saved what was left of me. Family isn't always perfect, but if there's still love, still effort, even the cracks can become home. If you've ever faced loss, if you've ever had to stand up through pain to protect what you believe in, I hope my story touched your heart. What would you have done in my place? Would you have made the same choice, or stayed silent to keep a fragile peace? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's reflect together, learn how to love, forgive, and grow stronger through every story. And if you'd like to keep walking this journey with me through stories of faith, of family, and of hearts that never gave up, stay with me so we can keep moving forward together.